Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for having me tonight. It's a great pleasure. I'm very excited to tell you a few words about a type of polar light named the Dune Aurora, which was discovered a couple of years ago thanks to citizen scientists from Finland. Citizen scientists are people who are not researchers for their job, but who are interested in science and genuinely want to help in actual scientific studies. So the story of the aurora always starts with the sun. It's here at the very center of those images. And what you can see is that streaming from the sun is this expanding atmosphere it has, consisting of protons and electrons. It's called the solar wind. And you can see from the images that the solar wind is by no means steady, quiet flow. It has some kind of bursts. And those bursts are named solar storms. And when they come to the Earth, they can produce some interesting phenomena. So when the solar storm reaches the Earth, it encounters the terrestrial magnetic field shown in blue here, and the solar storm itself has a magnetic field in yellow. And under certain conditions, both magnetic fields can merge in a process known as magnetic reconnection, and then the particles from the solar storm have a direct access to the Earth. When those strange field lines move to the night side, they can reconnect again, and then the particles from the solar storm are trapped on terrestrial field lines, which they follow all the way down to the polar region, and they enter the upper atmosphere. And this is something that we call particle precipitation. When a particle precipitates, let's say it's an electron, the more it goes down in the atmosphere, the more likely it is that it will encounter an atmospheric constituent. Such a constituent can be an atom, a molecule, or an ion. And when it's hit by the precipitating electron, the constituent gains some energy. It switches to an excited state, which is not stable. So the constituent has to release this excess energy. And it can do that by emitting a photon, which is a grain of light. So in the end, the aurora is just a collection of all those photons emitted by excited atmospheric constituents because of precipitating particles from the space. As you can see from those pictures, and maybe you have seen also in real life, the aurora has several colors, but not any color. The reason for that is that it really depends on which atmospheric constituent gets excited. A given constituent can only emit certain types of photons. For instance, atomic oxygen can emit green or red auroral emissions, whereas if you see blue aurora, it's coming from the nitrogen ion. There are also non-visible auroral emissions in the infrared or ultraviolet wavelengths. And you can also see from those pictures that not only the colors can vary in the aurora, but also the shapes. And we are interested today in a very interesting and intriguing auroral form, which was photographed a couple of years ago in October 2018 by a group of amateur photographers from Finland who noticed this very peculiar shape in the green diffuse aurora. You can identify some parallel stripes which are brighter. And those stripes, they evoke sand dunes in the desert, so that's why we call this Dune Aurora. But how can we explain the specific morphology of Dune Aurora? Well, we can think about two possible mechanisms, thinking about what I just said about how the aurora comes to be. In the first scenario, the flux of particles precipitating from space, you remember those electrons from the solar storm, can be maybe modulated spatially, and it hits an atmosphere which is, on the other hand, homogeneous. If you have that, then you can expect to have some aurora with brighter areas where the flux of precipitating particle was more intense. But there's another possibility. It can be so that the precipitating flux coming from space is spatially homogeneous, but the neutral atmosphere itself at about 100-kilometer altitude has some kind of internal fluctuations, internal modulations, with areas which are denser, that is to say have more atmospheric constituents. And if you have that, then again, in those areas where you have more atmospheric constituents, you will have brighter aurora, so you get stripes. And we actually think that the second hypothesis might be the way to go, because we identified a special and rare type of wave which can happen at about 100-kilometer altitude in the atmosphere, and which has a morphology evoking that of the dunes. So we investigated this a little bit further. we took a second Dune event for which we had 6 pictures from different citizen scientists across Northern Europe, and for which we had also satellite observations of precipitating particles and of the neutral atmosphere. And the 2 key findings from this study were first that there was indeed particle precipitation just at in the region where the dunes were seen. So it is actually so that the dunes are an auroral phenomenon. The second conclusion from the study was that even though we could not directly observe an atmospheric wave, we saw some signature in the temperature in the atmosphere that evoke the possibility that there was indeed a wave which was present. So not fully conclusive yet. We still have a way to go, but this does give some credit to the second hypothesis. And I'm going to stop now. I thank you for your attention, and I'm very looking forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Maxime. What an amazing talk and an amazing animation showing how the aurora is actually created. That's just blowing my mind, so thank you for that. And let's talk a bit about the citizen science aspect to your research, because that is what fascinates me. Tell me a bit more about the citizen science collaborations and that aspect of your work so far.
Yeah, indeed, it's a really important question, because I really want to credit the citizen scientists for those 2 studies that I have presented. The discovery of the dunes really came to be because Finnish amateur photographers who spend many nights every year taking pictures of the aurora at the earliest opportunity identified on their pictures, this is a really strange type of aurora. And they asked my boss, Minna Palmroth, who is a professor at the University of Helsinki, they asked her, like, what, can you explain this? And she was like, well, this is actually a really good question. I don't think this has ever been studied before. So then Minna involved me, and together we looked in more detail at those pictures. We analyzed them, but always hand in hand with citizen scientists, first from Finland, and then in the second study, we even had citizen scientists from Norway and from Scotland who got involved in the second study, and really, without them, we wouldn't have any data, so we wouldn't know about the dunes.
That's amazing. But as you said, your key finding, or one of the key findings, was that Dune Aurora is actually a type of aurora, most likely, and not something else completely. It's not some sort of an other type of phenomena in the sky. So was there actually some doubt that this could have been something completely different?
Yeah, actually, yes. It was not 100% sure, because there are other optical emissions in the night sky, some of which are, for instance, the air glow, which is a very faint emission, also in the green shades, but which takes place due to chemical reactions in the upper atmosphere. It could have been air glow, for instance. There is another very interesting citizen science result in space physics, which is called STEVE. And STEVE is, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, it's another phenomenon which appears alongside the aurora. It was discovered maybe 5-6 years ago by Canadian citizen scientists. And it's a kind of purple, whitish ribbon, which is like a bit equatorwards from the main green aurora. And at first, like, there was no clue. Is it some special type of aurora? Turns out that when the scientists who studied STEVE looked at satellite observations, for instance, they noticed that there was no precipitation associated with STEVE, or at least no precipitation responsible for this specific emission. Also, by looking at analyzing the light coming from STEVE, like looking at the different colors it contained, they realized it cannot be associated with de-excitation of those atmospheric constituents following precipitation. So could have been so that the dunes were also another emission, optical emission mechanism. But now we are pretty confident that since there was precipitation, it has to be the aurora.
That's amazing. Now we know that aurora can resemble sand dunes. It's just amazingly beautiful. And if you see someone called Steve in the sky, it might not be aurora. Okay, can you explain a bit, or kind of talk some more about your views on citizen science in general? Why do you think it's so important?
Yeah, I think citizen science is one of the key ways to maybe bring science back to the general audience. Of course, outreach, like we are doing today, is also like part of it. But in citizen science, what I really like is that there are many people who are really interested in science. They want to get involved. They don't have necessarily the education for that, but they have the will, they have the courage to take pictures at night when it's cold and so on. And they ask the right questions. So by showing that normal people, if I may say, can also do science, this might increase the trust that the society at large can get in scientific results. And it's very important, I think, in the past couple of years we've undergone to see that trust in science is really important to re-establish. So I think citizen science has a role to play in that.
Sounds really good, and that's really something that we could use when you think of the past couple of years and the situation at the moment. Could you perhaps, would you have some insight into some exciting new developments or maybe trends or possibilities in citizen science that you might tell us about?
So I can think of 2 examples of citizen science projects still in the field of auroral physics. One of those, I will start by the one coming from the US. There is a project named Aurora, in which citizen scientists who are taking pictures of the aurora are invited to upload them, and especially on Twitter with a certain hashtag, so that they bring those auroral pictures to the attention of scientists who can then make statistics of where the aurora was seen at a given time. But now coming back to Finland, I really want to promote a very exciting project which requires a huge effort, which is called the Taivaanvahti website. It's actually a kind of catalog of celestial phenomena, not only the aurora actually, but also when you see fireballs in the sky, those meteorites, when you see eclipses, when you see special looking clouds. There is this interactive catalog in which you can report if you have a picture or not. You can say, I was at this place at that time and I saw this, and you describe it. And if you have a picture or several, you can upload them. And this turned out to be a very powerful database for our Dune Aurora studies, because then looking back in that Taivaanvahti catalog, we could identify several events, among which was the event used in the second study. And I really want to acknowledge the great effort of those who maintain this Taivaanvahti database, because they are doing a really fantastic job.
Okay, wow. So that's something you can get involved with if this strikes a chord with you as either a stargazer or night sky gazer or a citizen scientist, maybe waiting to be born. Okay, now we have at least one interesting audience question for you. And an audience member is thanking you for a really interesting presentation. Thanks. Does pollution in the air and atmosphere affect the color or the formation of the aurora in some way, or how we can view it?
Okay, to the best of my knowledge, atmospheric pollution will mostly be confined to the lower part of the atmosphere. It's mostly in what we call the troposphere, where all the meteorological phenomena take place. So the aurora, on the other hand, is produced between 90 to 300 kilometers altitude, so much, much higher in the upper mesosphere or in the thermosphere, as we call those regions. I am not sure if pollution, by emissions of all kinds of, contaminating substances in our troposphere would have an effect. What is, however, relevant to auroral studies is another type of pollution called the light pollution, and that also affects, of course, what astronomers are doing, because the light pollution makes the overall sky looking less dark, so we don't see as much contrast, and that can be problematic when making, for instance, absolute studies of the light intensity in a given auroral event, for instance. That's what I can think about.
Well, thank you for the very good answer to this quite exciting question. Thanks again, Maxime Grandin, for a beautiful presentation. Let's give him a round of applause.